I'm Drew.
And I'm Tony.
And welcome back to another episode of Back for Our Future, the show that goes back to look at our future and yours. We've been talking about 1993. We've been in 1993 here for a little while, and we're going through that, and we're going to keep going until we run out of the 90s. And then the 2000s. Who knows what will happen. So if you're just jumping into this show, as always, we like to just put preface in front of it. You should probably go back, even though this is a show about the back, you need to go back, listen to some episodes to kind of understand where we come from. If you want to start at the very beginning, that's great. If not, you can get a pretty good vibe for who we are if you listen to the 2-part So Married an Axe Murderer episode. That's going to give you a little taste of us. You're going to miss some great stories if you don't listen to the whole catalog, but that's going to give you a pretty good taste. Or you can just listen to this episode and get a great taste too, because there's some good stories inside of this. Anyway, joined with me as always. That sounds like we're married. Is my deepest, oldest, longest running friendship, rivalry, whatever it may be, depending on the month. Tony Dignajati.
Yeah, exactly. What we're doing.
I'm just going off the whim. So let's jump into it. So we're going to start this out. We've got a soundtrack episode here. You guys know we love music. That's another portion of the show we're going to touch on. But before we get into all that, we kind of got to lead in. So this episode, very important. Luckily for Tony, I have over the years forgotten to tell him happy birthday on his actual birthday, but I actually, of the people in my life, not just because I'm close to him, his birthday happens to fall on October 13th. The reason that's important is because I can just immediately say like, oh crap, it's Friday the 13th. Although that only happens, every 4 years? But even then, or every 7 years, 6 years, whatever it is. Even then, the relationship that I have with him, I always remember it, even though I forget. Usually I'm either a day ahead or day behind when I say happy birthday. But on this October 13th, something really magical happens. I'm going to let you tee this up. It's your birthday show. This is your birthday show. It's also a Christmas show, but this is your birthday show. What do we got going on?
First, I want to talk about a couple things. First of all, it's a great week to be great, of course. And I'm going to tell you right now that, one of the things that we're doing right now, because this is basically the Christmas episode as well. And, one of the great things that we do in this household is, and with my parents and my brother, but what we do is we have foster kids. And we got 178 of them this year.
Holy smokes!
Foster kids that we have to get Christmas gifts for, and we do take donations for this. They're not always money. You don't have to pay money, but if you have toys or anything like that, you can hit us up on all our socials and all that stuff. And if you want to give something throughout the year to this fiasco, I would say go ahead. But one of the great things about this is we don't always give everything out that year, so a lot of times we pack everything back up that we didn't include as gifts, and we put them away for the next year's. And the funny thing about that is, and I've told my mom this over the years, and one of my big jobs here is always taking these boxes out and unpacking them. And it's quite a few. I mean, it's like 20 big tubs, and so I unpack all this stuff, and sometimes I'll look at it and I'll be like, man, this stuff is starting to get a little long in the tooth, and some of the stuff's becoming outdated, and, it's not going to be something you can just give out to any random person anymore because it just doesn't make any sense. Well, we've come to that on this one item without question. I mean, without question. There is nobody in the world who's going to want the item I'm about to show you. Now, if you're watching this on Spotify and YouTube, then you're going to get to see the item in real time. Otherwise, I'll put it up on the socials. I'll put the picture of the item up so you can see it, or you can go to Spotify or YouTube or one of the places that actually shows on a video, and you can watch it there. But this item right here, I'm pretty positive nobody ever wants it. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Now I'm holding up, for those people who can't see it, I'm holding up headphones. Headphones that look like they came from maybe a cassette Walkman. I'm not really entirely certain. I mean, they're really old. And when I look in the back of this thing, I see that they're from 1991.
Oh
It's
my
a long
God.
time ago. I don't know how this has continually been put into this box, but I make fun of this. I make fun of this item every single time. Every year I pull this back out. Every year I look over at my mom and say, "Why is this still here? Why do
That's
we keep packing
amazing.
this up?" But yes, there we go. Headphones from 1991. I'm positive there are no kids in 2024 that even know what this is, let alone want to put it on their head.
Listen,
Luckily,
they may have, you
good.
may have kept them so long. You may have kept them so long that they've come back into fashion like vinyl records.
That's true. That might be true. And there's definitely people that collect vintage stuff. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. So you have to find the kid that literally says that he wants vintage items, and that's for him. Because outside of that person, nobody wants it. Now, luckily, we do have a table over here, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff all around us right now. But there's a table over here that has a lot of modern day headsets that people actually do want. So that's good. We do some higher end stuff at times, but mostly it's mostly toys. But it's a lot of teenagers and stuff like that, and they want higher
Right.
end electronics. So we do what we can.
That's absolutely amazing. We should discuss maybe putting those up for auction, and then the money that's raised from those
There you
can
go.
go towards buying
That's a good
some new
idea.
stuff. Yeah.
I think they cost at the time they were purchased. They cost $1.88.
Oh my God.
Cost $1.88. So hopefully we can get a little bit better number than that.
Yeah,
Can't,
that's a good
can't buy
start.
$1.88 these days.
You can't buy much. You
No.
can't buy much. Not
Well,
even a coffee. Go
we
ahead.
got a
What'd you say?
big show. We got a big show here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you ready? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna let you tee it back up. It's October 13th is Tony's birthday. I established that. Some huge things, an amazing story, or a couple of stories come from it. You want to go ahead and drop the bombs on this one because it's a hefty release date. Hefty.
It's a hefty release date. So between October 13th and October 15th, there's going to be four very, very big movies get released. And we're going to talk about two of them right now. October 13th, that's my birthday. I don't know. I mean, this is God's plan right here, man. Because I mean, for these movies to be released on my birthday, it was pretty amazing. The first one is A Nightmare Before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to us all, of course. And then A Nightmare Before Christmas is just such a wonderful, wonderful classic.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's one of those films that even though it's animation, because it's that really stylized Tim Burton vibe with that stop motion effect or stop motion animation, it's timeless. I mean, that movie is so timeless. It's beyond. I mean, every season, starting at Halloween all the way through the holidays, that movie. The genius of that movie from a marketing perspective is that it can play literally from October 1st until December 26th. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
get a massive run of movie, and I mean you are built in an audience for a lifetime. It's genius play, but it's a good movie too. It's super fun.
No, it's amazing. I mean, and I think a lot of people don't realize, it's always called like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, and he conceived the idea, he produced it, but it's actually directed by Henry Selick, who was making his directorial debut at this time. And of course, it was a classic. It's a classic now. Of course, it was a hit then. And Danny Elfman, of course, does all Tim Burton's movies, but he also does the singing voice for Jack as well. So, pretty awesome. And one of those rare movies that actually has two different voices doing the lead character, because Chris Sarandon is doing his talking voice, and also, like I said, Danny Elfman's doing his singing voice. It's such a
It's
classic.
a and it's interesting too because I think a lot of times people think about Danny Elfman as the composer, but he also had a pretty big role in, I think it was Oingo Boingo, if I'm not mistaken,
Oh,
was the name of the band. Daniel. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Danielle, classic. Now, my brother's going to hear that name and he's gonna love it because that's his favorite guy. That's my brother's favorite guy. Danny Elfman is my brother's favorite guy. Like that's
Yeah.
his favorite guy. Now the funny thing is, Oingo Boingo's before his time, so he's not an Oingo Boingo fan by any stretch of the imagination. He's a Danny Elfman makes great movie soundtrack guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I mean, listen, there's no the thing about Danny Elfman and his music, much like Tim Burton's style, is both of them are intertwined, obviously, because as you mentioned, the relationship. But the crazy part to me is you can hear score. I can hear it just a few bars, and I know it's a Danny Elfman score. It's the same way with John Williams. It's the same way with really, really, arguably, it's really just John Williams and Danny Elfman are the two that I would say are the most iconic composers of the modern era.
No, I would agree. I mean, you definitely have to. They're definitely at the top for sure.
Yeah. And he has a great. Is this one of his first times working with? Is Helena Bonham Carter in this? Is she's a character in this, or is that just Corpse Bride?
That's Corpse Bride.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if she had if this is one of her earlier films in the relationship with Elfman or not in terms of their working relationship.
No, no.
Okay. All right, so there we are. Nightmare Before Christmas. Do you remember seeing this? Did you see? This seems like a movie you would have seen with your mom at least.
So I saw
Yeah.
I saw one in theaters with like Jeff and Mom, to be honest with you, and saw it at Carmike. Yeah, I didn't see it like a bunch of times. Like I've saw a bunch of these movies this year, but definitely saw this one. Yeah, we loved it. I mean, it was everybody's liked this movie. I mean, Mom, Jeff, everybody loves A Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, like I said, the classics, and Carmike 10 was the theater near to us at the time. So yeah,
Yeah,
always.
it's one of those movies that has aged for me in a good way. Like the more it aged, the more I enjoyed it. I don't think I cared for it much when I was young. Not because I didn't like it. It just wasn't my style of, I don't like musicals. When I was younger, I definitely didn't. As I've aged, I appreciate musicals. And so I appreciate the work. And certainly as I became a filmmaker, knowing that was all done stop motion and understanding that process, then my love of it and my appreciation for it went through the roof. So,
Have your daughters seen this movie?
oh yeah, they watch it every year. Oh yeah, multiple times a year. Yeah.
And they like it.
That's how. Oh, they love it. That's how I know it runs from December 1st until December 26th in our house. It's just if it's on, they're watching it, kind of thing. Yeah, they totally love it. Now, the other movie that comes out this year is really the Christmas present of Christmas presents for you on your birthday, because
The best.
anyone that knows you, anyone, and there's countless tales of this, but anyone that knows you knows that this movie it's literally. I would maybe even venture to say that there's a possibility that this film is as synonymous with you as, yeah, I mean, I don't even know a comparison. It is like literally people know, I'm sure if people said, what movie is Tony Nick Najati, they would say this movie.
And that movie is Rudy,
Oh, boy.
about Notre Dame football. I looked forward to this movie for so long before it finally was released in theaters. That I mean, I had pumped myself up so much for this film. This is I don't know how this got released on my birthday, but that's like divine intervention right there, without question. Because I mean, it's me, you know. I mean, the quintessential Notre Dame lover. I mean, Rudy released on my birthday. Come on, man. I mean, that's just that just doesn't happen. But this movie is. I tell people to this day. I mean, when they ask me for my top three or top five films, this is always in there. Because I always like to kind of mix it up and give some of my favorite comedies and some of my favorite action, and then this is one I always like to throw in there to show that I'm into like deeper drama type stuff, and this is the film. I mean, it's Rudy, man. I mean, like I'd be lying if I didn't throw this into my top 5 every time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If you were like standing around me and somebody asked me for my top 5 and I didn't mention this, you'd be like, he's lying about his top 5 because Rudy's got to be in it, you know.
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. Do you still, so when we lived together, it was tradition that the week before football started, you would watch Rudy. Is that still a tradition that you keep to this day?
So yeah, so I always watch it at least before the first game of the season, without
Right.
question. And then when we got like really big games on the docket, I always watch it before the really big ones. There used to be a time and it has been for a while, but there used to be a time when I used to watch it for every game.
Holy smokes.
I would break it out like on a Friday night before every game and watch it. And then time in life and stuff like that starts to make changes into your schedules a little bit. But and seeing it, I mean, I don't even know how many times I've seen this movie. It's a lot. It's a big number.
Oh yeah.
It's not dozens. It's hundreds. So I'm not I'm
Right.
not not exactly sure. Um, I can play all the roles out for you without question. There's no doubt. I don't think you want me to. I don't think you want me to. And maybe you do. Maybe you do. I mean, it's funny, you know. But yeah, I mean, I could play all the roles out. I mean, I'm so tied to this movie. First of all, and I don't even know if you know this or not. Like the producers of this film, there was a reason. So when we were going to see So I Married an Axe Murderer, and I saw that movie 10 times in theaters. When I saw that movie 10 times in theaters, this was always one of the trailers. This played before So I Married an Axe Murderer every single time, and
I
I
had
didn't.
no idea.
It did, and so one of the reason for that is because, and this is crazy too, right? Uh, the producers of So I Married an Axe Murderer are Robert Infried and Kerry Woods, who also produced Rudy. They produced So I Married an Axe Murderer and Rudy. Think about that. Think how legendary that is.
No, no, that's insane. And in the same year, they dropped those two
In
movies.
the same year, they
Yeah.
dropped these two movies. The two, maybe the two biggest movies of my life.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild to think about the fact that those two producers put together those two projects that as people have listened to this and the more they, if people, the more they listen, the more they'll understand this certainly. But those two movies, as we've said, are synonymous with you. And it's fascinating that these two individuals ended up making two films that literally define you through media, right? You could define his character through media because you're a hardworking dude. You're an outstanding human being. You're very funny. You're very witty. All those character traits from each one of those movies combined to make a Tony Nick Najati, which is absolutely insane, but it's absolutely true.
But it's funny to also because Robert Freed, he's who he's married to? Nancy
Huh?
Travis.
Oh, no way.
He is. Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
And I think it was probably. I mean, I know that they had met, somewhere around in that time frame. They were doing that film. So I Married an Axe Murderer, of course. But yeah, I mean, they've been married for a long time. But yeah, I mean, it's. I thought that I always thought that was kind of funny as well.
That's wild.
But the amount of Rudy stories. I mean, this movie's really been a big part of my life, not just from the fact that it's a Notre Dame movie. In 2003, I did a movie called A Game of Their Lives, and it was about soccer. It was about the 1950 World Cup soccer team, and we basically we mentioned it a little bit on the show in the past. But it was a movie with Gerard Butler and Wes Bentley and Patrick Stewart and Terry Kinney and John Rhys Davies. I mean, it was a really great cast. Gavin Rossdale from Bush. Um, and so I did that movie. I interviewed 7 times to get that movie
Good grief.
with different people. And I had no idea why I was interviewing so much for that movie. I was like, man, I've never, and I was pretty early in my career at that point. It's 2003. But, um, but I had to interview for this movie. And I find out later that the reason I was being interviewed so much was because they were trying to figure out where to put me on this AD staff. And I ended up getting the spot where I had to be the team manager, and I would start my day by getting all the cast members that were on the soccer team, Gerard Butler, all those guys. I had room keys to all the rooms, and I would get them up in the morning, and I would make sure they loaded up onto the vans, and I would make sure they got off the van at the end of the night, and I was with them all day long. And I would, I had to make sure they got to all, I mean, because they were a soccer team, and I was in prep for a month with them as, so they would be playing soccer and everything else. And then I would, at the end of the shoot. So I mean, I was with them the entire time. I would hang out with them. I would make sure they weren't getting into trouble. I was with them literally like almost 24 hours a day doing this job, right? So this went on for like 2 months, and so the whole time I'm doing this stuff with these guys, and the reason I bring all this up is because that movie was directed by David Anspaugh, who did Rudy. It was also written by Angelo Pizzo, who wrote Rudy. And the great thing about this whole situation was they had a lot of friends who had roles in the movies Hoosiers, because they were the team that brought Hoosiers to us with Gene Hackman, and then of course they did Rudy, and they would have a bunch of their friends come and do roles in these movies. And so when they got to this movie, all those people that were in Rudy came to this set.
Unbelievable.
So we got, like Angelo Pizzo was married to Greta Lind, who was, Mary in Rudy. And then, Don Strategos, who's the high school teacher in Rudy, comes and does. So we had a whole bunch of these kinds of guys, smaller roles and things like that. But I mean, they would come to our set, and then everybody was staying at the Chase Park Plaza in the Central West End here in St. Louis. And so what would happen is I would go there. I'd be there with the team anyway. David Anspaugh would come to me every single day and ask me who was doing the best in soccer, who was doing this, who was doing that, who was going to their training, who was doing who was going to their physical trainers, and who was taking all their appointments, who was going through massage therapy and all that stuff, who was hurt, who was not, and I would have to download all of my information to him every single day. Every single day we talk about this. And it got to the point where he's like, we would talk about all kinds of stuff, and I was telling him he knew I was a fan of this movie. He knew
right.
it. He knew the only reason I tried so hard to get Game of Their Lives was because Rudy was my movie. And I was like, so he would constantly talk about this film because he knew I wanted to hear about it. And so he'd get Angelo to do the same thing, and he'd get all these guys. So when some of these guys would pop in, like Don Strategos, who played the high school teacher and stuff like that, when these guys would come, Anspaugh would a lot of times go to dinner with them, and he'd invite me along. So I'd be constantly at dinner with all these guys who just loved me, and I was like, I love these guys, and it'd get stories about Rudy. That made that movie obviously the most fun one I've ever done, pretty much in my career, because I mean that was just the highlight. And of course, I got them to all sign a script for me and everything else. So it was pretty remarkable and a lot of fun. And then now, the great thing is, I did a movie in 2008 called Good Old Fashioned Orgy, and I had an assistant. Her name was Taryn, and fast forward like 8 years, and I was talked to her on. She's like a Cubs fan, and I noticed that on Facebook, and I'm a Cardinals fan, of course, and and I gave her some grief about being a Cubs fan in like 2015, and her husband, I don't think he was her husband at the time, but her husband saw the post and said, "Hey, come to St. Louis, come to Chicago whenever the Cardinals are in town. I'll buy you a beer." And I said, oh, "Okay, great." I never did, but what happened was I went to his page and started snooping around, and when I did that, I started noticing that he was a big Notre Dame fan, like a really big Notre Dame fan. He's at all these games and everything else. So I started talking. I friended him up. I started talking to him. I'm like, "Man, I'm a big Notre Dame fan too. I didn't know you were such a huge Notre Dame fan." And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. My dad has season tickets and blah blah blah. And we started talking, and now since about 2016 through now, which is 2024, him and I talk and text through every single Notre Dame game. Every game. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They can be playing a team their favorite to beat by 30. We'll still text through it. We'll text through all the big games. And so we've become really, really close friends. And so much so that now we go to games in South Bend together like every other year. So I've been to his parents' house. I stay at his parents' house. And this is a great guy. His name is Patrick Priest. I told him I'd drop his name on this show because it's about Rudy, and he knows everything there is to know about that movie as well. And we do when we are together, we do lines of this movie together.
Oh, good grief!
Yes, we have done that, and so it's kind of funny, but yeah. So he's a huge fan. He's worked with Sean Astin. I have not, but my brother got me a signed 8x10 Rudy 8x10 by Sean Astin. So
Nice.
that was cool. And then right now, to kind of come full circle, right at this moment, of course, our show airs later, but right at this moment when this was being recorded, Patrick's working with Angelo Pizzo right now in Bloomington, and Pizzo's the director of this movie.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. I mean, look, it's the great thing about like movies, but when a movie gets that personal and connects you that deeply, it's kind of like for me how there's a young guy that works with me named Patrick, and I mean he's 22 years old. I mean could be my kid basically. I tease him about it all the time, but the reality is we have Star Wars in common. We can talk about Star Wars, love and hate, and trash on it and do whatever. But you have that. So when something is that personal to you, luckily for you, they haven't done to Star Wars, or done to Rudy what they've done to Star Wars, and they haven't remade the character where Sean Astin gets the football and just throws it over his shoulder like he doesn't care about football anymore.
Right. Hopefully they don't make that movie.
No, there's no reason to ever remake that movie. It is a true classic, and there's no reason to there's no reason to make a sequel. There's no reason to make a prequel.
No.
There's no reason to do anything. Rudy is the movie. It's probably most people's favorite. I bet if we did a survey, it's got to be up there, dude. Got to be.
It's up there. I mean, there's a lot of people who like the funnier ones and stuff like that. But the cast is so amazing. You got Sean Astin, Jon Favreau. I mean, before he got really, really, really big. And, Ned Beatty, Charles S. Dutton is as perfect a role as it can possibly be. I mean, it's just Robert Prosky and Lily Taylor, who I worked with.
Yep.
Just a great cast from top to bottom, man. And this is the quintessential underdog story. I mean, it's the quintessential underdog story. You got Rudy, and he wants to go to Notre Dame, and, he's undersized. And, of course, there's a big monologue from Charles S. Dutton about him. But, he's an undersized guy. He's an underdog. He's got a ton of heart. Nobody in his family thinks he can go. Everybody treats him like crap except for his best friend, Pete. His brothers all treat him like garbage most of the time. It's just like, so, he had to really come up, man. And, I think people identify with that story.
Well, now, it would be a great story that maybe people need to go watch now when they look at life and look at struggles. And that kid did not survive. He thrived. And I think it's like a very great lesson of like, you have a chance to thrive. And when you take that opportunity, you just got to run with it.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah, it's a good film. It does lead us from this week, though, into another week. And that's going to bring up a movie that, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. The only reason I saw this film, well, for two reasons. I grew up I like Jim Varney. I really do. Right. And I'll spoil it for us. It's the Beverly Hillbillies. But what I wanted to say was the real reason I saw this movie was, if I'm not mistaken, is it not Erica Eleniak in this movie?
She is, yes.
Right. And so we previously as young men have seen, I think. No, it maybe hasn't happened yet. No, she has not done. She's not done Under Siege yet.
It hasn't come out yet.
Okay, so the payoff is later.
I apologize, it has. It came out in 19.
Okay, so
Sorry.
92. So we have seen Under Siege.
That's 3 episodes now. Yes.
Which means.
And of course, you saw her in, Baywatch. You were watching Baywatch, don't lie.
I was, but not as much as in because the reason why is in Under Siege, I got to watch her a lot. There's a lot to see.
Under Siege, a movie filmed in Mobile, Alabama, while we were
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On a battleship. But yes, my point is Erica Laniak's in this movie. I like Jim Varney because I grew up, I almost say my name is Earl. That is so far not accurate. But I grew up watching Ernest movies and the Ernest series. And I remember when he was the Alabama Power spokesman. I remember all this crazy stuff about Jim Varney. He's very, I always liked him and always thought he was funny. But I saw this because of him and because Erica Laniak was at the time, she was a poster babe. I mean, she was smoking hot and she could be hung up in your room somewhere on a poster.
It's a good movie. It's funny, man. I mean, I liked the old show. The old show's quirky and kind of fun. And Jed Clampett's, amazing character. I loved, I like old Jed Clampett and Ma and all of them. It's a funny movie. And I used to watch the old show because Buddy Ebsen was on it. And of course, he's Barnaby. And Barnaby Jones was like gospel to my grandfather. So I used to watch old Buddy Ebsen shows and stuff like that. So Beverly Hillbillies is one of those. So I used to watch that. And so when the movie came out, it was a natural thing. And it did pretty well. I mean, it was like a $25 million movie. It did almost $60 million at the box office. It wasn't a smash hit, but it did pretty well.
Actually, I know something I wanted to ask you. Let me jump back to Rudy. How did Rudy do at the box office?
So, yeah, I was just thinking about that, too. I was like, I kind of didn't dive into some of that because it's such a personal movie. But, I mean, I had seen that movie at I saw that movie multiple times. And I saw it at Carmike 10, and I saw it at the Dollar Theater as well. But yeah, it did pretty well. I mean, it, doubled its budget. So that was not too bad. It was like a $12 million movie. It did, 23, 24, somewhere in there. And then it did, really well on secondary markets, of course. So that's where you're making your money. And of course, the movie's a classic. So, if you're a Notre Dame fan, every Notre Dame fan owns that movie, at least one copy.
At least one copy, he says.
Copy. I have 4 copies of the film because I had a VHS copy. And then I've ended up with different versions of it on DVD because there was a plain version, and then there's a version that's got more features and stuff. And
yeah.
And I ended up with one by accident when somebody gave it to me as a gift, and I just never took it back.
It doesn't hurt. Not for you. It doesn't hurt to have Rudy on demand. At any point, you can have Rudy. Now, how many copies of Beverly Hillbillies do you have?
I own one. That's more than you, buddy. I own.
That is true.
I do have it on DVD. But yeah, I own one copy. I think me, man. There was a stretch there when I was hitting the Walmart $5 bins for every movie that there was. And I'd pull up 70 movies at a time sometimes. So. Yeah.
There's a quick aside because you said that and it triggered a memory in my. There's a point in which Tony and I, when we very first were making movies, we would laugh, and it was like a scene from a movie will come out later called Bowfinger, but we would laugh that we would say to each other, one day, you know what, we're gonna be in these $5 bins, and sure as crap, one day I went. We're there, baby. We made it to the $5 bin.
I've made enough. I mean, well, a lot of times the $5 bin's not bad movies. They're good movies that have just been out for a while. So sometimes it's a really big hit, but they made so many copies of it they just couldn't sell them all, so they've ended up in the $5 bin. So the $5 bin's not necessarily a bad thing, but in our careers, where we haven't necessarily released a whole bunch of $200 million films or anything. We've put some bad movies into that $5 bin at different times.
We sure have. Have.
I've made some good movies too, but I mean, and so have you. But we've put some bad movies into the $5 bin that I don't even think people want for $5. To be honest with you.
Well, you know what? Now, because the way kids are, they're so bad they're good.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
There's a few of those. So anyway, that was a nice little aside, but there we go. So October 13th, obviously huge day. October 15th, we're leading off into the Beverly Hillbillies, but then comes a movie. And look, I got to tell you guys, we're going to talk about the soundtrack to this film only because this soundtrack occurs in minus, I think Run DMC and Aerosmith had done Walk This Way together. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. And
yeah. Aside from that happening, this soundtrack is so overlooked, in my opinion, as being influential to what's going to happen 6 years later, maybe 5, but it's going to change the entire landscape of music for years to come. And the movie we're talking about and the soundtrack equivalent is a film called Judgment Night. And let's talk about the movie for a second, because first off, the cast of Judgment Night is absolutely mind-blowing. When you read it on paper, it is phenomenal.
I love it, man. I mean, listen, the soundtrack is absolutely amazing, without question. And that's the first thing that we come up on, too. And we'll talk about the movie, of course. But the first thing that we come up on is the soundtrack. Because, again, soundtracks were released before the films in this era. So, you come up on the soundtrack first, and sometimes that gets you to the movie. So that's the way it kind of went. Although, this cast is without question amazing. I mean, Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Dennis Leary is absolutely tops in this movie.
It's my favorite role. It's actually my favorite role of Dennis Leary's. I rewatched this about a year ago out of curiosity to see if it held up. And by the way, that movie does hold up. And the only challenge you run into is cell phones, but that is, you remove that concept. Dennis Leary is so good as a villain, so good in this. Yeah. He's just so, and he's a charismatic villain. So not only is he a piece of crap, but you love him for being a piece of crap. Like, he's that good. He's just such a great villain in this movie.
And I mean, you got, and Stephen Dorff, Jeremy Piven, I mean, is really great. Peter Green, Everlast from House of Pain. I mean, it's Michael Wiseman. It's phenomenal, man. It's a great cast, and all those guys were bigger. I mean, a lot of people would be like, well, they're not, but a lot of those guys were really big, especially in 1993. So, I mean, Cuba Gooding Jr. is really huge at that time, coming off of movies like Boys in the Hood and stuff. So, I mean, it's Emilio Estevez is, Emilio Estevez, man. And I've talked to Emilio because I've worked with Emilio, and I talked to him about this movie because I had to. And he was still very fond of it. It's like one of the movies that he was really happy to do because, he had come off of stuff like Mighty Ducks and stuff like that, and things that were a little bit more playful. And this was really a pretty serious role, and he wanted to do stuff like that. So, he likes it. Of course, he loves the soundtrack. He loves the soundtrack idea behind it.
So I got to be honest.
Great action movie. I think it's a great film. And it's a really big time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was just going to say, though, it is an action film. It is a thriller. But in many ways, it also has like elements of a horror film in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because the chasing element is, that's a thriller trope. But it's the way that the chases happen. In many cases, there's a jump scare or whatever. It is just so well done. I was thinking about this, though, when you think about this movie, it is called Judgment Night, and there are approximately maybe a handful of day scenes, which means this entire film is shot at night, which I'm not a night owl. I know Tony can handle nights all day. Like, that's his jam. But me and a lot of other human beings that have normal circadian rhythms and don't have like this superpower like he does, those shoots are so brutal and so grueling. And I bet it's a 30+ day shoot of nights only.
Yeah. And that was something that we talked about as well. When I talked to Emilio about this as well. He was like, dude, we shot so many nights on this movie. It got ridiculously dumb. And I was like, and this is it's a brutal. I mean, when you're doing night shoots, it doesn't really matter if you're a night guy or not, because like your body gets thrown in, like you have to work on a day and here and there, and then you work at nights, and your body gets kind of thrown around. Even if you're kind of like me, who doesn't really have to, be in a certain rhythm every day.
Right. Yeah, I just thought about it when I was watching it then, and it reminded me, and then thinking about you having gotten to talk to Emilio. But again, if you guys have not seen the film, a quick breakdown is it's some dudes in modern era would be going to a UFC fight. They're going to a boxing match, but
Right.
it's just some dudes in an RV driving to a boxing match, take a wrong turn, and that's really all you need to know. If you just watch it from there, I don't want to spoil anything because the movie just gets wild and it's violent, so you need to be prepared for that. But it's so again, we are young dudes. We live in a part of the United States where if we were to go to New Orleans or somewhere like that, it would be very easy for us to take a wrong turn, which New Orleans, very similar setup to this movie in terms of the way the interstate's laid out. If you think about it, like
Yeah,
there's high
absolutely.
rise ramps. Yeah.
I
And
mean, it's
so
great.
very easy. Yeah.
It could really happen, especially
Yeah.
back in this era of time, because this is really before GPS is like a big thing. You know what I mean? Like, and cell phones are a massive tool that everybody seems to have, and I mean, yeah, this is a big. This is you can watch this movie and be like, that could have happened, because nowadays everyone throws on their GPS and kind of just kind of glides into wherever they're going,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
thinking about what's going on. But back when this is going on, I mean, they're bringing out a map and they're trying to figure out where they are and everything else. So yeah, this could definitely have happened. I mean, dude, how many times have you and I taken wrong turns? That was like kind of our thing back in the day.
Yep.
We took wrong
Yep.
turns everywhere. You know?
Well, I remember leaving a concert or some event. We were in New Orleans, and I had to pee so bad, and you kept going like because you would go over there for obviously we told the story about New Orleans Saints season tickets and me and Nintendo maps, but you had been over there enough. You're like, I just really don't know if this is the exit, and I'd be like, oh my god, I'm gonna die
I was like,
because it wasn't.
yeah, we're like coming back the other way, and you go through like all these New Orleans East exits when you come back, like you're going back towards Mobile, and it's not. There's some good ones, and there's some not so good ones, and I'm like, I don't want to go there. We're not going there.
Right. Yeah, it's Judgment Night with me having to take a whiz. That would have been the impetus of our story, as terrible as it is. All right, so let's go. Let's go to the soundtrack because I set this up, and I think you agree with me. Like this is groundbreaking. Here's why it's groundbreaking, and this is what I mean by that. At the time, the only time you heard really this rap rock mix that obviously we all know comes later on in the 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s with Limp Bizkit and that whole, there's all that entire group of, there's tons of bands that did all that stuff,
Yeah,
was the fact that like it had not happened before. And the way that this soundtrack is presented is they took a metal artist or a rock artist or an alternative artist too, because Mudhoney's in the mix,
sure.
Pearl Jam, but they would take a rock and roll artist of some genre, subgenre of rock and roll, and then mix them with a hip hop artist, some subgenre of hip hop, because there's actual like there's some rap on here, there's some like hardcore rap, gangster rap, all the way into like just classic hip hop.
Yep.
So they have this mix and they mixed them together. And I'll be honest with you, I still listen to this regularly because minus one or two songs, we'll talk about those. But I still listen to it regularly and I can still spout every single word of Just Another Victim. I can believe it or not, well, we'll get to it. I got maybe something that'll shock even Tony. I don't think he knows this about it, but we'll go through the list. If is that your plan there? Is we're going to talk through this? Do you have any thoughts on the soundtrack real quick?
Yeah, we're good. I mean, first of all, a couple things. I mean, we knew about the soundtrack. I mean, well, we knew about the movie, but we knew the soundtrack was coming out before the movie, obviously, and we bought it. And we went to the record store, and I remember very vividly going into Camelot with the hair guy and everything, and we saw this on the new release wall, and we said we got to buy it. But neither one of us had a lot of money at the time. I think you were still working on allowances at the time, and
Yep.
I had just gotten the job where I am going to be couponing at Papa John's.
Now, for reference, callback. This is the job that you postponed by going to movies. Is that correct?
Right. This is the job that I postponed by going to movies and seeing So I Married an Axe Murderer 55,000 times. I'd eventually get this job, and
Right.
I'm going to have it right around this time frame. This is where I'm going to start it, right around this time frame. So I haven't been there very much, and I'm making minimum wage. So which is not much in 1993 at all, but
Right.
it is what it is. And and I'm a couponer. I'm not a driver. I'm not making tips or anything. I'm a guy who literally makes minimum wage, walking around putting coupons on doors. So everyone hates me, of course, because nobody wants that. And then, so we see this on the new release wall, and our brilliant idea was to split it 50-50.
Right.
And you would pay for 50% of it, and I would pay for 50% of it. And because we lived across the street from each other, this would work out easily because I could just give it to you and you could give it to me and blah, 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 blah. It never worked out that way, of course, because what happened was we bought the CD, and then you loved it so much that it just ended up at your house the
That's
whole
fair.
time, outside maybe 1 week or two. It ended up at your house until all of a sudden, when I asked for it back just to, enjoy some of my 50% of the time, it was, I don't know where it is. It's gone. And I was like, what do you mean it's gone? And you're like, it's gone. It's gone. I don't know what to tell you. And so is your prong CD. It's gone too. And I'm like, what? So I lost the 50% ownership of Judgment Night, and I lost the entire 100% ownership of my prong CD, which I had bought at Satori Sound for $5 or whatever.
But there's a part to the prong CD though. There's a
There
part
is.
to that. Yeah. I'll let you continue, and then I'll jump in with that genius maneuver of mine.
It's genius, all right. So we had to fast forward, a couple of years, which we're gonna go ahead and tell the rest of this story anyway. But fast forwarding, of course, he decides on a gift of mine for like a birthday or something to give me the Judgment Night CD and the Prong CD as a gift. So he's gone off and he's bought them brand new. He's bought these discs brand new. He's bought these discs, and he's given me the Judgment Night, and it's normal. But the Prong CD, we got to backtrack just a little bit, because when I had the Prong CD, I bought it used, and the CD was perfect in perfectly intact. But the jewel case, the little prongs on the inside of them, a whole bunch of those were broken out. They were just busted. So the CD could be in the case, but it would maneuver around. We didn't want to shake it or anything like that. And so when he bought the Prong CD, instead of just giving me a brand new case like a normal human being would, he opened up the damn case, broke out all the little jewel pieces, and then gave it to me busted. Because that's the way he had taken it. So now I have to have a busted case for the rest of my life. And I still own it. I still have the damn thing. But you know what? It's still busted, you jerk.
It's true story though. I remember that. I remember it so well. I remember getting the disc, and because at this point, it's a few years ahead. I've had a job and I've made my own money. And I remember we listen, Judgment Night, and we got to get back to the soundtrack here in a minute, but Judgment Night, the reason this is a couple years later, this happens because we still listen to that soundtrack as buddies. It was a big deal with that prong disc though. I remember it. As soon as I got it, I broke those little tabs out and was like, oh, he's going to love this. And I think I left them in there for you. They're loose, rattling around.
If you break them off, they go down to the little hole there. And that's where they are. You can hear them. I mean, you can hear them if you jiggle the case around. They're still there. I mean, it's crazy. Who does that stuff? I mean, who does something like that? That's nutty. That's
brotherhood.
Nutty.
Brotherhood is what that is. All right, so this soundtrack, we've told you guys some of the stories on. Obviously, it means something to us. It's not quite as important. It's very important. It's not quite as important as So We're Married was, because that changed our lives. But this definitely was like, if So We're Married changes our lives, this just keeps the momentum going. This is like another Well, hit from the bong. But like it's another one that just kept us going down the pipeline.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
mean,
want to go over
there's
the track list? What's your
yeah,
plan here?
I've got 'em- I've got it queued up and I'm ready to go. And yeah, I mean, it starts out with obviously Helmet and House of Pain, Just Another Victim. It's the song is so different than every other song on the album because when you listen to this soundtrack, um, the rap artists are usually doing their thing, and usually the rock artist is just playing over them. And this one, in this song, it's split. You know, like Helmet comes on, they do their whole thing in this song, and then Everlast and House of Pain do their thing, and there's this great arc that gets you there, and it really probably is the best song on the soundtrack.
Oh, hands down. It's not only the best song on the soundtrack, it's an almost classic. Oddly, it's almost a classic song because although it's on the soundtrack that I defined as being part of shifting the rap rock movement. As Tony said, it's almost like listening to the old timey stuff, a split 7-inch where you had Helmet playing a song and on the other side of the record is a House of Pain song because and it's brilliant. I talked to Paige about it when we talked, and he liked this song. They play it live a lot still. You only get half the song. You get about 2 minutes and 20 seconds worth of music, but it's just a great song. It's a great riff, and it just totally works. It's one of my all-time favorite songs in history of songs. I know every word to it, like forwards. This is my Rudy song, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, no doubt. And you know, I've seen Helmet a bunch of times. You have too. They'll play this song. They play
Yep.
the song. They just don't. They never do the rap portion of it. So that's how split up the song is. Like Page, they'll do the first part of it. They don't do the second part of it. I often want to tell them, I was like, man, I can come up there and just do the second part of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like Drew and I can just come up and do the second part of the song, and you can play the whole thing, and everybody would love it. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, so when I do research on this, when I've done research on the soundtrack in the past, I know DJ Muggs. He's one of the guys, and of course he's from he's from Cypress Hill, of course, and he was one of the guys influential in getting this done, and and he has always said that Helmet was the first band who was ready to do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That Helmet was the first band that was like, yeah, we're 100% in. And I know, Faith No More and Sonic Youth were always part of it as well,
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting.
and that helped get a lot of other people on board.
Of
What I'm
course.
kind of going with that
It's
as
like
well.
it's like casting a movie. You get that one or two named actors involved, and then all of a sudden other people will come to it because it's validity, right? It means it's a real
Yeah.
project. So
So the second song was "Fallen" by Teenage Fan Club and De La Soul, and I know for a long time this was not one of your favorite songs on this album because it's definitely
right,
different than the other songs. But I think it's pretty. I think it's a pretty good song.
you've always liked this song. I've
Yeah.
I've not traditionally liked it, but I will tell you, it's my second favorite song on the album now, and I can sing every single word of it almost. It's pretty like I love this song.
Your tastes have changed so much over this course of this like 30 years. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you were into like heavy stuff at that point, or just like alternative. It had to either be alternative or heavy. Heavy alternative was preferable, you know.
yep.
But so this song doesn't really doesn't fit your taste at the times. But you're totally different now. You listen to a lot. You're way more diverse in not just music but movies as well. And this is like so now this would be something you're more into. I think you probably even enjoy this soundtrack more now because you listen to all the other songs.
Oh yeah, 100%. It is interesting though. I would argue that the first two songs, maybe there's another one in here. Another Body Murder is pretty good, but the first two songs are almost timeless songs because Fallen is so different. When you hear it, it doesn't sound like anything else on this album. Everything else feels like a mashup, but those first two songs feel like original songs written specifically with the artists together. It's as if they really work together on this. And some of the other ones, they're there, but some of the other ones, as Tony said, it's the rock is underscore to the rap. And these, it's perfect synchronicity. So
Fallen is great too because it's the last song they hear before really is there like going in this RV and driving to this event. Fallen is playing, and it's kind of like the last happy spot we have in this movie before all the stuff starts to happen to him.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So the third song is "Me, Myself, and My Microphone" by Living Colour and Run DMC. And I know you were a fan of both of these guys. We used to listen to this song quite a bit, though.
Yeah, it was popular. I like that song. It still holds up. It's you get quality rap obviously from Run DMC, and you know, Chuck D has a very specific approach in the way he says stuff. And so like his rap, his cadence, if you will, is really good, and it blends really well with Living Color. I still very much enjoy this song. Not as much as the next song though. I really like the next song a lot.
Judgment Night by Biohazard and Onyx. It's amazing.
Yeah, that right there is just, and that's one of the songs where I feel like the real rap metal thing kind of starts to kick in, because it is very much Biohazard being a hardcore band, New York style hardcore. You know, it has that edge to it, and then you bring in a very aggressive rap group. Onyx was, and they have very specific tone. This is the birth of rap rock right here. This exact song.
And then you have "Disorder and War" by Slayer and Ice-T, which was never really one of your songs on this. It's pretty good. I like it.
It is pretty good. It's a cover, if I'm not mistaken. Is it not like a melody of exploited songs?
Medley of songs like "War," UK '82, and "Disorder" and all that stuff, and it's all kind of like a big thing. So it's pretty fun.
This is pre-Body Count then, correct?
He's got Body Count. He's got Body Count at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean he's just coming out. He's just with Ice-T here.
Yeah, got it. It's funny because he is this really solid rapper that really loves punk and metal. It's pretty fascinating having seen Body Count live. They're incredible live, by the way. Very offensive, as they should be. But like it's very interesting, and you mix him with one of the heaviest bands, certainly at the time, Slayer, and you get a very aggressive punk rock. Now it's really old school hardcore. It's kind of funny knowing the history of it. So,
well, Ice-T's so diverse. I mean, he loves everything too, and that's what's cool about him is that he's into all kinds. I mean, you see him on Law and Order. You know, come on, guy. I mean, he's on Law.
Right.
You know, and then Another Body Murder by Faith No More and Booyah Tribe, and we listen to this a lot.
This is one of your jams too, right? Is this not one of your top jams off this album?
This is the one that I definitely like a lot. It's just got a really cool melodic element throughout the course of the song, because of the Faith No More aspect. And then it was Jonathan Green's favorite song on this album.
That's right. Yeah.
And we saw this movie at Carmike 10, and I wanted to throw that in. We saw this movie at Carmike 10 with you, myself, Jonathan Green, and Jonathan Howard.
Sure was. The Jonathans. Yep.
This is a song that you always made me skip every time. I Love You, Mary Jane by Sonic Youth and Cypress Hill.
It's funny because I was not a Sonic Youth fan until college. I did not care for Sonic Youth, and probably arguably their heyday. I did not care for them at all, the earlier Sonic Youth, all the way through. I just didn't really love them. This song still doesn't resonate so much with me because it's a little too pot-like. It's too much about pot,
right,
for me.
This was a big one of the people who loved this song and also loved the song "Fallen" was David Bacon.
Sure was.
David Bacon loved this song. I Love You, Mary Jane. He loved this song for a lot of reasons. I'm not gonna get into them all, but I mean, he loved this song. He thought it was amazing.
Yeah. David. We can't tell any stories about David. He's a political figure now, so there's no stories to come out for David.
So, he's a great guy. And I mean, listen, we hung out with him a lot. He's in the later group of people that'll come a little bit later on. But I mean, he loved this. He loved this song. It was amazing. But Freak Mama, Mudhoney, and Sir Mix-a-Lot, I really liked this song because I was a huge Mudhoney fan, and Sir Mix-a-Lot was pretty awesome.
It's fun. Look, Freak Mama is one of the funnest songs on the album just because of sort of the whimsy and playfulness, and it's one of those kind of things like you hear this song and it's like, okay, this is fun. And it again, reiterating the rap rock situation, this starts to get into that like Urge vibe. It kind of reminds me of Urge when you listen to it, where Urge had some of that on the verge of rap rock element to it. Orange 9mm has some of those tones from time to time, certain pieces, but it's good. It's a really good track. Just for what it is, it's fun.
And then, you got Missing Link by Dinosaur Jr. and Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
Now, here's the crazy part. Love this song. Yeah. Love it. Dinosaur Jr., I just went through a phase where I was listening to old Dinosaur Jr. again. Apparently he's not a nice guy, but that's fine. But listening to the lead singer, Jay, whatever his name is, Jay Massis. But listening to it, just their music is so it's got such body to it, and it's great. And then you bring in someone whose voice is so iconic. He has. Like, there's only a few rappers in my mind. There's rappers that we've heard a lot, but there's rappers that I can hear just one or two words and I know it's them. Charlie Tuna is one of them, and the other one is Del the Funky Homo Sapien. I mean, there's no mistaking it.
And I loved this next song because I was really into the rock band that's in this song. But Come and Die by Therapy and Fatal. And Fatal is one of those artists that it's really not easy to find anything at all, or know anything about whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't even know who it is. Is there
weird.
any? Yeah,
no.
There's no.
But Therapy was huge, and Therapy was not a huge band, but not as big as some of these other ones. But I loved them, loved them, and they're still around. But I mean, they were amazing back in this era, and that's a good song.
It's good. It's
really heavy.
And very aggressive. It's very aggressive song.
I mean, it's like, they're screaming "Come and Die" like the whole song. Pretty amazing. And then there was kind of a bonus track, and it's on there, and it's amazing, and it fits two groups that are massive at the time. But "Real Thing" by Pearl Jam and Cypress Hill, huge song.
And that's a good track. I actually like that track. Was it a hidden track? Was it like where you had to let the CD play?
They go into you got to wait several seconds, and it goes into this little melodic little bit, and then it goes into the song.
That's something that if younger people listen to this, or just a reminder for us middle folks, I mean, you don't think about it much anymore because Spotify puts out a playlist and it's got all the songs on it. But it used to be that there was tracks that were literally hidden. I mean, it was a hidden track.
Yeah.
And Tool did a lot of that stuff. This album did it. And whether they were buried where there was no track number, but you got bonus tracks, or sometimes it would just let it play. I think Tool did this a lot. You would have to let it play, and then it would give you a little hidden message or some other. And I'm not talking about the wacky crap that people are like, if you play it backwards, it says, enjoy Pepsi. Yeah, it's not that stuff.
So one thing that's kind of cool about this soundtrack, and I've known about it for quite a long time, but there was supposed to be another song on here.
Oh.
And it was supposed to be a collaboration between Tool and Rage Against the Machine.
Holy moly.
And they were supposed to do this song, and they did it. They did the song. And you can get it. It's in bootlegs. You can get it like through bootlegs and things like that. So if you do a little bit of research, you can probably find it. It was called Can't Kill the Revolution.
Holy smokes.
They did the song, and they didn't like the results of it, so they nixed it, and it's not on the album. So if you're into this album and you didn't know anything about it, there you go. There's a little something extra for you.
Yeah, I have. I did not know that, and now I'm going to go try and find it.
I think you could.
Yeah. We've talked about vinyl before. This is one of the vinyls that I still keep. I had to seek it out, but I have this vinyl on. I have the whole soundtrack on vinyl because that's what I collect is soundtracks on vinyl. Every once in a while, a modern band, but I try and keep it to soundtracks. And this is one of my favorite ones to own, is because of the history it shares between you and I. I can look at the cover and then just think about it. But certainly now that we have Paige in our lives, I mean, it makes it even more interesting. But yeah, great soundtrack, game changer, game-changing soundtrack.
You had a piece of information that I didn't even know about.
It was just that Falling is one of my favorite songs now.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, no, I mean,
because I remember telling you that I hated it. I did not like it at all growing up, and I love it. Like I play it. I play it more than any other song including Judgment Night, or I mean, including Just Another Victim. I play this. I sing this song just walking through my office. Just traveling at the speed. I mean, I can. I'll just. You remember when it used to be dope? Yeah. I mean, I know it like in and out. Like it's just part of my life now. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's a great song. I mean, I liked it because I liked De La Soul and Teenage Fan Club was cool, but I mean, I did like that song a lot because again, it's in such a big part of the movie because it's about to really bad stuff's getting ready to happen to these guys. It's a kind of a happy song, so it's the last bit of happiness and maybe the last daylight scene they shot on that movie.
Yep, possibly.
Because when they leave and they're in the RV, it's daylight, of course. They haven't gotten there yet, and they're leaving, and this song is playing, and it's daylight, and it's happy, and bad stuff's getting ready to happen to these guys. So this is the last bit of happiness. So it is a cool song, though. I like it.
It's a great track. So what are your picks for this week? I know that we spent a little more time because we wanted to talk about music because that's the point of the show. We get to do whatever we want. But what are your picks this week? Are they movies that you've listed, or do you have stuff off charts? What's your picks in this scenario?
You know what? I mean, like, listen. I mean, I could say Rudy, and but I'm going to say Judgment Night is the pick of the week as far as the stuff that we've talked about. Only because I still think there's some people out there who haven't seen it or even heard the soundtrack. To be honest with you, and so I would say both of those would be picks of the week. And I also saw a movie recently. Starring Michael Keaton called Goodrich.
Oh, I've only heard of that. I've not seen it.
And I would highly recommend this film.
Nice.
To pretty much anybody. It's really, really great. And if you're into Michael Keaton, I would say it's kind of a cross between like Mr. Mom meets One Good Cop, and it's like the way the elements are and kind of play in the storyline. But it's I mean, you're not a cop or anything, so it's not action of any kind. But the fact that he's got to deal with those kids and stuff like that in that movie, that element to it. So I would say it's kind of those kinds of movies. It's more of a throwback to old school Keaton, and so that's why I really, really, really enjoyed it. So that would be one that I would throw in there.
All right, there we go. I mean that's obviously Rudy's a classic, but Judgment Night, Goodrich,
yeah. I mean,
that's good.
If you haven't seen Rudy, watch Rudy, of course. But I mean, I think a lot of people have come across that film at this point. So I didn't throw it in there as a pick of the week, but obviously Rudy, of course.
Yeah, that kind of goes without saying at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Again, thanks for listening. You can follow us on all your favorite social media network places, wherever you might be. We're there for you. Come hang out with us and come join the conversation if you will. That said, Tony, you got anything else you want to say before we close the show?
We're close to Christmas. We're close to Christmas, folks. Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope you have a prosperous rest of your year. I hope you have a great New Year, too.
Yep, we'll see you. We got one more episode right around Christmas time. So, yes, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to all of you. We thank you for listening. We appreciate you. We see you. We love you. Thank you. Also, in case I don't say it, just as Tony did, see you guys. Well, I get to say that in the next episode, but I'll still say, in case I don't, next episode, see you next year.
All right, love it.
All right.